Hey everyone, welcome to the BSCT podcast show. I'm your host for today, Sam, and I would describe myself in three simple words. I'm a husband, father, and storyteller. I also have a hand in mentoring young creatives in my local community. And I'm very excited to be hosting today's show, where we're going to be discussing a wide range of topics surrounding how to build stronger communities together, perhaps touching on some of the issues that take place and what the resolutions are going forward. Today I'm joined by a self-proclaimed superhero in the person of Cliff. He's very kindly taken a few days away from fighting warlords in Wakanda to join us here today. But more importantly, Cliff is an anti-racism teacher who goes into schools, corporations to touch on issues with regards to racism and what some of the ways to tackle that would be for these companies. So thank you, Cliff, for joining us today. I'm also joined by Nathan Dodzo, who's a personal mentor of mine, but Nathan is an educator and a change maker, and a very integral part of what we're doing here today. So thank you, Nathan,
thank you very much
for putting this all together. So we're talking about building stronger communities together, and I'm sure we have a lot of solutions. But firstly, I believe in order to provide a resolution, you sort of have to diagnose what the issues are. So Cliff, I kind of want to start with you first, and if you could just touch on some of the trends that you've noticed over the years, and what some of the big issues are that would sort of be a threat to people in our community working together in harmony, or I guess being stopped by potential gatekeepers from occupying certain spaces. What was some of the trends that you would say?
Really, Sam, I think from the lived experience, born and bred in Birmingham, growing up, I want to kind of say on the streets of Birmingham, but I don't want it to be kind of some tale of me, kind of, some downtrodden human being. I grew up in all many areas of Birmingham, and each area of Birmingham has its own different social ills. Yeah. So actually, in and around Erdington, where I spent the majority of my life, you see different demographics. Actually, there is such a kind of class kind of base of lower class, whereby there is not adequate education, there is not even adequate food. There are a lot of food banks that have sprung up there recently. The environment itself is becoming more and more uninvested in, and therefore unkempt. And you see the attitude of people really suffering from, as much as when you open your front door, the vision that you see, does that really inspire you, or does it take from you? And I see a lot of people who are just fighting to stay in the game. So that creates one of our kind of things that we're up against as a community when we're talking about building stronger communities together. There's a serious challenge to mental health for the communities, and that's not just a black thing or a white thing or an Asian thing. The whole community, everyone that belongs in that community, are really up against the mental health battle. There are education issues, and I'm sure actually Nathan will probably talk about the levels of education. Yes, we all have equal access to education, but does the education that we access apply equally to all people? I don't think it does. I've always been a strong believer of the pillars of all communities are education, the ability to heal itself. So have we got the infrastructure to offer our own healthcare to each other? Do we have the economic resources to access healthy foods, that sort of thing? And also, do we control our own banking systems? And the sad fact is we don't on any three of those.
I think that's a lot to unpack, but before we get into that further, I want to pose that same question to you, Nathan. What are some of the some of the trends you would say you've come across that I would say stop the advancement of certain people from similar class to what Cliff has highlighted?
Cliff touched on some very important issues there. So when you look at health, mental health, physical health, and how to build those sustainable kind of initiatives that allow us to, first of all, lead a healthy lifestyle. Because without that, you can't then do anything else. But also, there's education, which I'm a big part of. I came here, I was born in Africa, came from Africa at an early age, went into the education system, and I was in East London, Hackney, and our school had pure, all we saw, or all the people that were in front of us teaching us, were what we call supply teachers. So there wasn't any consistency in the people standing in front of us. So we never had that consistent educational process. And then obviously it means that we can't then go ahead. So when we then go into college, go into university, we're already a step behind. Because of where we were, there was no investment, I believe, in education. But then again, that drove my motivation towards becoming an educator, because I wanted to then make a difference in that area. How do I then, rather than just sit back and talk about it, how do I affect change? So by becoming an educator, it means that and my research in education is about looking at the awarding gap. Why does it exist? Where does it exist? What are some of the issues that are creating this gap? And at what stage do we start seeing the gap, or does that gap start to really happen? And then at what stage during that process is it starting to fall behind? So that access, yes, we've got access, but the access sometimes is not the same in terms of what's being taught, or how you aspired to be someone, to achieve. Sometimes you have to see someone who looks like you for you then to aspire to be like that person. So it's just having all these things. So role models, there's so many issues that affect, the educational process. And sometimes I see it in some of the local primary schools, the amount of dedication or attention that's given to some of the students of color is not the same. And again, it's unconscious, and I'm sure Cliff can talk about unconscious bias and how that exists and how that can happen. So it's not to say that someone consciously does that, but the impact that it has on that person means that they're already a step behind.
I think you've both touched on some key issues there. From your observations, what would you say in the steps that you've taken, in the initiatives you've both been involved with, what would you say worked well or has worked well thus far and we should keep utilizing? What would you say has been experimented with or tried but doesn't necessarily prove successful? If I pose that question to you first, Cliff.
It's a really interesting question, Sam, because when we talk about what have we tried, and what varying levels of success have we had in order to bring about community change. This is going to sound really bleak. Pretty much everything we've tried has not worked. We're in communities. We can go all up and down the country, and I'm telling you now, you walk through the so-called ghettos of London, they're going to be very, very similar to the ones we have in Birmingham. You go down the other end of the country, wherever that might be. You hit Scotland. Trust me, the ghettos are feeling the same pains and ills that we're struggling with here in Birmingham. So one might ask the question: why is it that none of these things are brought around holistic change? Why is it that communities are actually more distant from each other than they have ever been before? Because, all right, born and bred from me, as Love said, the first community I was attached to was the Lyndhurst Estate in Erdington. I would say even back in the 70s, you are looking at a predominantly white area. But here's the thing. You could play anywhere on that estate. The estate may be 3 miles square. Probably less than that, maybe 2 miles square. But as a child, I could walk anywhere on that estate. And people would say, I know where you live, I'll tell your mum you're down there, go back up by your house. It was always that. My parents and I would be walking to shops, and my mum would be able to say, hello Janice, hello Sue, and so on. And we're talking about different people from different backgrounds, different cultural heritages, but there was something about the time that drew people closer. We had massive bonfires, bonfire night. In October, everyone would bring a bit of foil, a potato, you'd do your baked potato in there. Massive sense of community. But now, we can call it sign of the times. People stare at the thing in their hand a lot more than they do, saying to somebody, if you can call today at the bus stop. In general, the human condition is not in a good place. But as communities were never built in this country to meet the needs of those who are not from this climate, you know, we talked in education about, you know, black students falling behind, and they say not falling behind, they're left behind. They're not in part of the equation. So, you know, there are no posters in our areas to inspire children to do more, because we're not inspirable by those who hold the purse strings, the powers that be, the system. So realistically, I think lots of things have been tried, and the two things that I probably lament most is this. One, that within our communities, we let race and culture divide us way too much. As communities, we need to bond together in order to get what we deserve out of, you know, the country, out of the region. We need to carve our own spaces as a community. The other part to that is, nobody ever got this stuff by asking politely. And as controversial as this might sound, no one ever won freedom by just begging for it. You've got to fight, and that fight, you know, in years gone by would have been tribal, and that's on these shores, that's, you know, in African plains, in the Caribbean, there's been a history of resisting. Those are the fights of yesteryear. Nowadays, it's what we're doing with the platforms we have. We talk about plugging, we talk about, you know, websites, you know, the AboutFace website. There are loads of people all pushing. If we can collaborate a little more, be a little bit more fierce in what we're asking for, I'm long past, you know, waiting patiently. You know, some people talk about, you know, Dr. Martin Luther King, you know, and his philosophy and having the dreams. I've had the dreams, I've done all of that. I'm much more, you know, Malcolm with the gap by the window. It's time to fight. And this isn't, this again, I'm telling you, you know, we understand as three black men, we understand what the black struggle is. But actually right here and right now, everybody's struggling. I see people out there, I see a lot of drug addicts out there, black, white, except people are struggling. I think the people need to stand up and fight, and I just want to be wherever that fight is.
Nath, I'm conscious that some of your observations might be slightly different, because obviously you might have seen some of the efforts from an educational standpoint. If it's that or even beyond that, you know, what would you say some of the attempts to bring about change and advancement have been, you know, and what's worked well, what hasn't worked so well?
You know, as Cliff was talking about the you know, back in the day, and the community sense, the community spirit that existed, you know, was amazing, because I knew that wherever I walked, someone was watching me, you know. So that's part of that safer communities as well, part of it, you know, where you knew that your child was always safe, you know, no matter where they went, because someone knew. You know, like I said, I'll tell your mom and so you had plenty of parents. So the child was brought up by the village, by the community, but we've lost that because it was something that worked, you know. So sometimes there's aspects that aim to destabilize things that people are trying to do, and it takes us 2 steps back after we move forward. The other thing for me is unity is strength. You know, united you stand, divided you fall. And like you said, everyone's like this, you know, divided in their own space, you know, not even engaging in conversation anymore, you know. So the other aspect of this is the way that we have just connected, you know, with 3 different people from 3 different parts of the country coming together, having this conversation, trying to move the process forward. Now, I don't know whether this has been tried in this way, but now we've got access to, you know, the platforms that allow for this to happen, to then reach out to a wider community. So, you know, we had things that kept us together, music, you know, kept us together, sound systems, I think played a big part, which was part of our heritage, you know, played a big part in bringing us closer together. But it's also what then happens at some of these places that takes us, again, a step back. You know, I grew up in sound systems. I grew up, you know, playing music as a DJ, running a sound system. So for me, it was every year people knew, right? I used to be called Junior Mello at the time. He's got his thing happening, you know, at the carnival. And so those were things that I think brought us together in terms of just celebrating who we were and some of our culture. I think the thing that we need to do more of is collaborating with each other. Communicating effectively with each other. It's not that we don't communicate, but do we communicate effectively? You know, in order for some of these things to happen, it's down to us. You know, and when Cliff talks about the fight, I think some people think it's physical, but you know, it's intellectual as well.
Yeah.
You know, and in order for that to happen, we need more people at the table.
Yeah.
You know, we need more people in these spaces. We need more people, you know, aspiring to be the educators. You know, not the athletes, you know, or the entertainers. You know, because again, you know, you're just an entertainer, but no one's taking you actually seriously.
Yeah.
You know, as someone who can bring about, you know, massive change. And we're talking about change that will then inspire the next generation. We are here today, not for our children, but our children's children.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so how do we build that legacy, that sustainable legacy? You know, I think it was yourself actually in a conversation we had. How do you want to be remembered? You know, what do you want people to actually say about you? You know, after your time is gone. You know, how are you leaving something that people build upon?
Yeah.
You know, and I think this is where we've kind of fallen behind. It was happening. I remember in the 80s, you know, my parents, my mom, my stepmom used to talk about partner. You know, they used to come as a collective and they used to pump money into each other.
Yeah.
One then buys a house. And does it still happen? You could see people moving forward.
Yeah.
You could see people buying houses. You could see communities developing. But that's gone. Or it exists, I think, in some parts.
You're talking about a culture of yesteryear, how we survived, and there was something you mentioned, partner. One of the reasons for partner, not everyone could get a bank account. You know, we were being denied some very basic stuff here in England. But when the laws came out, the anti-congregation laws, so we couldn't hang out on the street corner and have a conversation. We flooded into churches, and those sorts of things. You know, partner was easy to organise when you're in church. You know, you had, you know, Sister Bennett, Sister Clark, sisters. You know, you had people would come together. Where is that for us now? Where is that?
Yeah.
You talked about, like, yes, entertainers and so on, but even the nature of the entertainers. I grew up on Public Enemy. I learned from Paris. I learned from, you know, Cam. There was some artists. I'll tell you. Where are those?
Bob Marley's,
the Peter Toshes.
The Message, yeah.
This is what I'm saying, the Message, Grandmaster. Where are those guys now? Now, admittedly, you got the likes of Stormzy and Dave will yeah. You know, you listen to their music, they've got something to say. We need more. We need more. If we can get more of that, it's a part of the community. Maybe in the past we've made the mistake of hanging every kind of your hope and dream on the entertainers. Or why isn't, you know, so-and-so doing more? Why isn't so-and-so? We need the special people in our community to be the guys who got the 9 to 5, the bin man. We need more respect for him. We need more respect for, you know, the guy he opens the community centre, the caretaker. We need more respect for the average brother on the street.
Yeah.
And then we can start building, because all of those guys are superheroes.
I always give my students this example of a bike. You know, a bicycle, for a bicycle to move, it relies on so many different aspects or parts of it. But one key, small little part, which is, you know, on the chain, you've got a little thing that holds it together. You know, like a circlip type thing. If that goes, the bike doesn't move. But no one ever thinks about this little bit being the connection, you know, the key. So, you know, and how often do we, you know, in our place of work, do we walk past the cleaner and not even acknowledge them?
Yeah. Okay, so still within the theme of, like, you know, identifying what the issues are. Cliff mentioned, you know, the ghetto looks the same wherever you are, be it in this country or overseas. I've heard the term gatekeepers a lot, right? So I guess the first part of this question is, do you both believe that there's such a thing? And if you do, I want to get specific as to who and what they are. You know, how would you both sort of describe who they are and what they look like?
Oh, wow.
Well, I'll tell you.
And if that's too controversial, you don't have to answer.
No. I think.
Shut down Babylon, all of them. Seriously,
we have to talk about it. We have to talk about it, because I think at the end of the day, there's one thing for me, you know, and I'm a media lecturer. I'm a journalism lecturer, and one thing, you know, comes to mind. One phrase: whoever controls the media controls the mind.
All right.
Yeah, that's it for me. And if that does not speak volumes to anyone, then again, I start to worry about those consuming.
Yeah.
Because if you don't understand how to consume and to be an active consumer rather than a passive consumer. Sometimes we're actively passive. So we think we're active, but we're passively taking in this information. So for me, media plays a big part in that gatekeeping.
Yeah.
And then someone obviously controls that media, so that's where, it starts, and I remember working as a journalist in Africa, and you always found that the Minister of Information was one of the most powerful people because they control the information. We've all got national TV stations, and that whatever message wants to come from those would come through that. And everyone sits at the end of the day and let's watch the news, let's watch this. Yeah. And whatever then we go out there thinking, or the behaviors that we go out and so everyone feels they know because they've seen it on the news or they've seen it on media. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's not about someone's experience. I've had arguments with people where they're trying to tell me, I know this, I know. Well, where did you see it? Do you see what I mean? So I think, control the media, you control the way people behave, actions. Whereas I think before, listening, I remember, growing up as a child, and we had grandparents telling us stories, teaching us, education. That was more powerful back then because it was something that came out of experience. Yeah? Not something that was a message that was created to change perception, to change behavior. This was something they went through and they knew. If you're sick, I don't need to go to a doctor because my grandmother had something that she knew worked.
Yes.
Do you see what I mean? So, we could go deep into this, and we're talking about health and well-being and so forth. There's certain foods, my blood pressure was always up and down, up and down, up and down. Every time I went back to my doctor, I'd get a new pack of pills.
Yeah.
There was a time, honestly, I had a whole bag full of pills. And it was my pharmacist who said, hold on, how come you keep getting different pills? Yeah? And then all I had to do was talk to my grandmother. Yeah? And that changed everything. But I was investing in pills. My life became dependent on pills. That some of them I became immune to.
Wow.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's where part of that problem is. And
You've just been boiling up Cersei. Boiling up Cersei. Because, yeah, man.
But
Merengue.
Exactly. All these things. But I think that's where some of the gatekeeping happens or takes place. But there's a lot more, And music. Oh, gosh. Again, we're talking about some of the messages that's within that. It comes from whoever's producing that track or that artist has their own message also.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some of it is designed to break us down, designed to our focus or our kids' focus, because I know how to now break it down and understand what's good for me, what's not. But my daughter, who's 5, will play that tune and think, that makes sense. And then they grow up with that. So unless I become more actively involved in challenging what she is consuming, and helping her understand that, I've lost her to the gatekeepers.
Honestly, the gatekeepers, I think media is the most powerful one, because media, obviously, you've got audio versions of that, you've written word versions, you've got moving pictures. You guys will probably remember back in the day when a tragedy would happen on TV, or unfortunately somebody's lost their life on the streets, or blah blah blah, and the reporter would be there kind of like, hi, we're here to report on the shooting of the young brother down the street and blah, blah, blah. And then what would happen is it's like, so now we're going to go to a community leader, and all of us would go, please don't be a black idiot. You remember that? Oh, please don't be a black fool. Please don't. They spent time today finding the one brother that we don't want representing us to come in front of this camera and talk nonsense. And of course, that's exactly who they found. Here we have, brother so-and-so from round the corner. Guy's got not an intelligence to say, which therefore now, although he's giving his version of events on this topical moment in history, in a news sense, he's just affected how every one of us are getting treated at school tomorrow. So when the school teacher is thinking with the other students about who might go on to university and this and that, this idiot on the screen that she watched last night and now got in her mind, I don't need to talk to Cliff about this. Yeah, your people are not you're not university. You're the guy who stands in front of the camera going, "Miss them, you know, miss them." Right. So that's one of the gatekeepers, the media. How it ricochets into the other gatekeepers being education, because I'm telling you now, one of the things that educators can do is remove dreams from children. When you get asked all the time, so what are you going to do when you leave school? What are you going to do? And actually what you'll notice is that lots of black people, certainly in my day anyway, maybe I'm wrong nowadays, and kids writing, you start off with, in primary school, I'm going to be a pilot, I'm going to be, a doctor, I'm going to be this, that, and that, because these are just, programs that you've seen, people being doctors. Yeah, I can be. I'm not affected by the bigotry. I'm not affected by the gatekeepers. Yes, I haven't had this negative impression of who I should be forced on me. So yeah, primary school, I'm going to be a doctor, I'm going to be this, I'm going to be that. Come secondary school, when teachers have kind of got around to telling you your best bet in life is to be a basketball player because you're tall and you're black. So that's you. You could be the next Michael Jordan. No, I couldn't. But yeah, you could. You're big and you're black. That'll do. Or you can kick a football really far. So young men now are looking at, okay, so I like music, so I can either be a musician or I can kick a football. If those aren't my options, no one's trying to tell me it's okay to go and be an optician. What brother out there is saying, I want to be a vet? What, we don't like animals too? Or, you know what I'm saying? The fact of the matter is there is no steer. No one's saying, you know what, go and start your own farm. There's a bag of land out there, you know. If you want to be a farmer, be a farmer. We're not told to be farmers. You know why? Because in the areas of this city where you could put farmland, they don't want us there. They haven't seen anyone who looks like us there, so no one can imagine it. So we don't go there. So let's stop the dream killers happening within education. Let's put more positive messages out through the media, be that music or news outlets, etc. And let's get some financial literacy amongst the people. I don't need your Pythagoras theory. I just don't need that. But can you teach me how to take £10 and turn that into £20? Can you talk to me about exactly what cryptocurrency is? Can you talk to me about what stocks and shares are? That I need. I don't need your Pythagoras theory. I just don't. So gatekeepers.
I think we all collectively agree that a system is, I guess, designed to work against people of a certain race, and not to sort of keep berating these gatekeepers as we were just touching on. But even on my way up here, just even on just like a local level, where you walk past the hair and beauty shop selling weaves and products marketed towards our people, but you take a peek behind the counter and it's not necessarily our own people that are selling our products to us. But then you sort of look inwardly as well, and I think it's good that we can identify sort of like the external issues, potential threats and whatnot. But also looking at ourselves, I personally believe that there are certain things that we sort of need to do, even amongst ourselves. Case in point, looking at a brother, a mentor, colleague, whatever you want to call them, and figuring out, right, what's your value and what's my value? How can I best serve you with what I believe my value is? Obviously the precursor to that would be humility, as opposed to seeing, so if I know, let's say Cliff is about to sign off on a multi-million pound deal that would change the trajectory of his future and his family's future, as opposed to looking at him with the crab in the barrel mentality, thinking, oh, he's made it out. How can I how can I stifle what he's about to get into to make me feel less sad about my own circumstances, and looking at that potential situation and saying, okay, so Cliff is someone in close proximity to me who's about to become a millionaire. I'm connected to a millionaire. How can I provide him a service that would see him allocate, a certain level of wealth that he has access to, thus meaning I can then benefit from that, and then you have this ripple effect through the community. How would you address those within our community that have that mindset that, as opposed to wanting to work together, I see you as a threat, which eventually has an effect on our advancement as a community?
The key of that is, why do I wait until Cliff is signing this deal? Why don't I help Cliff get to that position of signing the deal? And I think that's the important part, because otherwise I start to look like a leech type thing, where I'm just clinging on to him now just because he's got this deal. Now, does that make me genuine in terms of my motivations towards now wanting to work with Cliff? I think what I believe is about being able to spot potential and then supporting that potential for growth. And then it's now up to Cliff to recognize that, hold on, for me to grow and be what I am today, or to get to this point, it has taken the work of Nathan, or it's taken the work of Sam to help me get to where I am. And then together, he starts to see my potential in then what he's become. And I think that's the key. It's rather than waiting until that deal is about to happen, how do we support each other by seeing the potential earlier on and supporting that potential towards that point where it's then, great, so to speak. How can we find the greatness in all of us? How can we find the purpose in all of us? How can we nurture, I should say, that purpose in all of us? They say sometimes, I remember my grandmother always used to say, if you don't work for something, you don't see the true value in it. So by helping Cliff get to that point, I'm seeing the value, because I've also put in, it takes time for us to sit here, out of our schedules, out of our weekends with our families to have this conversation. So already we're seeing potential in how we could help inspire, develop, encourage, future young people to become great. Hopefully they'll look back and say, oh yeah, I remember watching that, and there are a few nuggets in there that I took that helped me then connect with the person next door. So sometimes I think it's about that potential, helping to just encourage each other, than waiting for the minute when someone's about to sign $1 million contract or £1 million contract to then say, right, where can I now bring in value? Because someone else has already seen it. That's why he's signing, that £1 million contract.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's where, I say, I think it's earlier on, those collaborations, those networking. We need to network more as a community, and also to realize we're not living in isolation as a black community. Within that black community, we've got black Africans, black Caribbeans, other people who are black but also grew up in Asia, So it's about knowing how then we can connect and also survive in an environment that is not really designed for us, but how can we then now, because our kids are here, how can we now build this safe, inclusive environment where we also then work effectively with everyone else in this ecosystem, and help each other then flourish and develop and grow? Because there's no reason why we can't be seeing more black faces on the business shows, on the Forbes 100. It'd be good to see a young black person who hasn't just made it through football or through music, but sheer hard work of creating. Not to say that all these other things aren't hard work, but it's not for everyone. Not everyone gets that opportunity. How many black managers do you see in football? Because that, okay, your career is just up until that point where something happened, you could be injured or your career comes to an end. What then? How are they also then inspired to become, or to invest in their communities? So I don't see enough of that happening. We've got all these people who, you'll see them, and the way that we know them is, he's just bought a new car, a new house, my cribs. I used to cringe when I saw that program. Yeah.
Exactly what you're saying. Can we all make it together? Can we all pool our resources? with a bigger picture, rather than, yeah, I'll help you, but I need paying for it today. Sometimes, you know, and the problem is that's a real kind of, you know, narrow problem. Within our community, there is a lot of poverty. Within our community, there is immediacy. I need paying today.
Wow.
But sometimes we have to be able to say, you know what, I'm going to trust that. By me helping you, we all improve our standing. But there's so little kind of trust. We need to create children that are anti-racism, but from our own perspective. Let's not kind of teach our children to distrust our own. So you'll hear it in barbershops where people say, boy, you know, I bought this, it never worked good. This, where you buy it from? Black people? You know that conversation. You go into your people's shop and you're not impressed with how long it took your one curry patty to come out. But I said, I'll go back there, you know. But how long have we been going to McDonald's and been told, can you pull over into that bay, please? We'll bring your food out in a minute. And you're thinking, well, your job is to cook burgers. I ordered a burger. Should it really, you know, be a 10-minute wait for something that it's the only food you do? Is a burger. But you know what? I'm back there next week. I don't boycott all McDonald's because I had bad service from this one. But within our community, we don't give each other the benefit of the doubt. And that's just not okay. We have to invest positively in each other mentally, because that's free. That's free. I can just see you and immediately think good things. I can see you. I can trust you. I will, rather than say, boy, say I have to tell black people I owe it before because they're not going to turn up to, I can just trust that you will be on time. And if you're not on time, then trust that it's okay for me to hold you to a higher standard and say, hey, you know, next time we've got to do this. Come on, man, this is us. We have those conversations rather than, boys, I talk to him, because that's what we do. But we believe the hype. This is stuff that's been taught to us. Black people are lazy. Black people are untrustworthy. Black people are this, and this. We hear that enough. Black man time and all of these things. We didn't invent those things. Those are labels we took on. We need to put them down.
I think that's very key, what you just said. You know, empathy is the main thing I got from both of those answers. To sort of add hope to what we're saying, I kind of believe that the playing field is being leveled a little bit in terms of access, like we mentioned earlier, to spaces like this where we could have conversations like this. You know, we don't have to pander to anyone that doesn't want to let us in. You know, we sort of see the opportunity and we seize it for ourselves. We can create platforms such as, you know, podcasts, YouTube channels. We mentioned financial literacy earlier. Really and truly, if applied correctly, how much power do we really have as a community to enforce change in our time?